Welcome back, David Volz.
Hello.
It's been it's been a minute. It's been about 6 months worth of minutes. A lot has happened in your life since we spoke last time. And we had the fortunate opportunity to be able to catch up a little bit the other day. And I really enjoyed that conversation. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to be me, because I don't know for you, but did you feel like there were some uncomfortable points in that conversation, especially when I was telling you about like boundaries?
No, it didn't really feel uncomfortable to me. 'Cause I feel like we have a good, kind of a good connection, a good way of communicating. I felt like what I did feel though was I almost felt bad that I might have been overwhelming you in a sense with my story, because I try to be a person that never complains, and but also I like to be a person that when someone asks me, how I've been or what I've been up to, like I want to be honest. And I felt like we hadn't connected in a while, and I know we had planned on doing something like this together. So I almost felt like when you asked me what had been going on, I felt as though I wanted to be open and honest and almost explain why I hadn't been able to get together and do another podcast or do something productive or constructive, sort of as we had talked about. But I realized, giving you the full lowdown of what had been going on in my life, I could tell you, I overwhelmed you. You were like, what
It's
the
not
heck,
hard to do. It's not hard to do. So
yeah.
number one, I'm very sensitive. Number two, as tough as I may seem, I can get overwhelmed emotionally. I'm very sensitive to sounds, to textures, to feelings, to temperatures, to people and energy. And, there's no doubt in my mind that I like you. And that's why we're talking today. And I do trust you. And when I asked you, hey, what's been up the last 6 months? That's an invitation for you to be David, and you are nothing short of open and honest. And I wonder if you can help me. What is the best way for me to respond? Because you were going on for about 45 minutes about everything that was going on with your family. And you have a lot of older family that you're taking care of. And just a lot had happened with sickness and taking care of people and just like drama. And at one point, you know what did it? You were describing so vividly the situation where you were in the car with the person who was just essentially badgering you.
My
And you were
mother
talking about like a nail feeling like it was being driven through your ear and into your skull. And
with a spike,
a
the hammer.
spike, a spike. I felt like I was there and I was reliving
Wow.
it with you. And
Mm.
I was like, ho, 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 ho. And tell me, because I want you to be you. I don't want you to change, but tell me, what can I say in the future or with other people? Because this happens with other people too. How do I politely say like, hey, that's too much? And I still like you a lot, but how can we just like tone it down?
Mm. I mean, I think an answer that would be, unique to you. I mean, and how you feel, because we're all so different. But with that, I might say so you don't have to interrupt someone. You could preface the question like, hey, I want to know what's been going on. I know you've been going through some heavy shit, and I'd like to know, but keep in mind, I'm really sensitive, so maybe don't layer in all the descriptive details
You know what?
or a lighthearted version of the story or something, to preface it with,
I like that. I can do that.
yeah,
I
that
can
way
do
it's, but
that.
before it even gets started, just say, hey, because, I tend to be, I use a lot of metaphors and imagery when I talk, when I create my meditations, especially when I write, and I'm a kind of a metaphorical person, like the metaphor of the spike, but it's a way of describing a thought or a feeling. And in that moment, that's was the best, I guess. And I was describing it in that way because that's literally how it felt. And when I remembered the situation, that's kind of how I almost visualized it. And I guess, sharing that detail was to bring you into the story,
Yes.
to bring you
Yes.
there, because I'm a kind of a storyteller in a sense. Like I like to tell stories, but I also like to listen to stories. And I love, when a friend or someone's bringing me into their world in that moment. But I understand if you're a sensitive or kind of an empath and you get pulled in too deep, it could be overwhelming. So maybe find your own way of prefacing the question, especially if somebody's been, like, so somebody's been going through it and you really want to know. Say, hey, I want to know, but take into account that I'm a sensitive person, and maybe leave out some of the overwhelming details.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a really good suggestion. I never even thought about that because I love storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with movies and TV and books and hearing stories from real live humans. I like being, immersed in their world for moments. But sometimes those moments aren't always happy. And I don't want to be immersed in only the happy moments. I want to feel, when they go through sadness. I want to feel when they have jealousy or envy or disappointment, all of the feelings, the whole array of human emotions. However, sometimes you're so good, not only you, but people can be very good at storytelling that you feel like you're there. And if I was in your shoes in that situation, I don't know if I would have been able to hold my cool or, however that expression is. I think
Yeah.
I would have stopped the car and I would have just left and taken a breather and walked out, or maybe screamed at the person back. I don't know.
I mean, the first suggestion or thought of pulling over the car and getting out would have been the smart thing to do. And I think I was thinking to do that, but it was a moment, we were coming from downtown, my mom and I had taken her to court, we were downtown. I'm not used to driving down there, and everybody's aggressive in the driving, and there's not much parallel parking. I don't know. I think I was just getting hammered. It's like a barrage of this psychic attack that I couldn't even think clearly enough, I think, to pull over and to get out of the car. But I wished I would have. I actually did, I think, I don't know if I told you, but yeah, I did snap and I did yell in a very kind of guttural, extreme expression of pure frustration and hurt and anger and a lifetime of just being kind of under attack by her in some ways. And yeah, I lost my cool big time. I mean, I didn't completely lose it, but I yelled in such a fierce way and said some things that weren't cool. But I'd been pushed not completely over the edge, but I was hanging off of the edge by my fingertips.
Man.
Just barely there, like just I could have lost it more, but I lost it more than I had ever wanted to. For me, it was like more than being triggered.
Right.
But it's cool in a way, like try to learn from it. Still processing the whole experience. I think it was about 6 weeks. I think I told you I got real sick afterwards too.
Is
And I
that
think
when your stomach started hurting?
well, no, my stomach was already pretty bad for a couple months. And I think that was either just before, I think that was just after I was finishing up my fast, my 5-day fast. Yeah. I think it was just after, and I was still recovering energetically and health-wise and everything else. And then I got kind of sick-ish after that. And then, of course, a few days later, I got that COVID that I was telling you about. And
That makes sense. I wonder, and you tell me, but I wonder if, because I know from experience when I'm really, really stressed out emotionally and mentally with someone or myself or all of the above, I'm depleted. I'm depleting my adrenals. I am really taxing my immune system, and I am opening myself up for more bacteria and viruses and just invaders and pathogens. My defenses aren't strong.
that's it. Definitely when you bottom out chemically like that and have such a stress on you, or for me, it felt almost like a psychotic break.
Have you ever had a psychotic break so that you know what it feels like?
No, I don't. No, I mean, I think I've told you I've had a few really bad head injuries, right?
You know what? I don't remember you telling me about that. You mentioned something about TBIs.
Yeah, traumatic, the TBI. I've had a few really I've had a lot of concussions over my life, but I had two really bad ones in the last like 15 years. But two of them were really bad, and I think it changed me in a lot of ways chemically.
How?
Well, I think the head injuries were so severe, I lost big chunks of my memory. But for a while after each one, my cognitive function was definitely not what it should be, noticeably so. But the thing I think that I notice about myself that's different is I just get more deeply angry when things happen than I ever did before. I used to take things more in stride, but I go into the red much more quickly than I ever did, and there's a rage that gets almost activated in a sense that didn't used to happen, and I don't like it. I don't know what to do about it though. I've researched a little bit on recovering from traumatic brain injuries, and I take some supplements, but I don't know if I'll ever be quite normal again. But I'm working on building an awareness of it. I'm putting it into some of my meditations that I record for myself, and a way of noticing the feeling and the thought in the moment, and kind of take a step back from it and be the silent observer of those thoughts and raging emotions. But it's not easy.
No.
That whole episode with my mom, when she was just hammering me, and she wouldn't stop, and I was pleading with her to just stop talking to me. She finally it escalated to shut up, and then it kind of even more than that. But the more I would try to ask her to stop, the more she would yell. It's that spike, and I even brought my Wi-Fi, my over-the-ear headphones with me, because she's done that before, and I put them on, and I couldn't get the music to start playing, so it was like she's hammering me psychically through the earphone, and I was like really losing my shit. Luckily, though, at some point I was able to get my Spotify to play through it, and I put on some really loud music, and I couldn't hear her at all anymore.
You drowned her out.
I was able to do it. It took a minute though, and
Did it help?
yeah, it helped. Once I could get the music blaring through the over-the-ear headphones and completely drown her out, it was infinitely better.
Sometimes
10,000 times.
when I get overwhelmed by noises, whether they are like construction workers or dogs barking or people talking or people yelling or whatever it is, I put my headphones on or my AirPods, and I will put it into noise cancellation mode.
Mhm.
And so even when I go to the movies and because I love movies so much, but they turn the volume up, I think, too high, and everybody else says, Kat, it's normal. I put my AirPods in, I put it on noise cancellation so I can still hear the movie, but it is dampened down so much. And then I get to have a wonderful, exciting experience that's not overwhelming.
That's really smart.
I just figured it out like not too long ago. I also sleep with earplugs in, and that way nothing disturbs me. And then when I get up in the morning and I'm making my tea and just doing my morning chores, sometimes I keep the earplugs in for a little while longer, just to have complete silence, just to kind of elongate that complete silence.
I like that. Yeah, that's smart. I might play around with that myself.
Yeah, I feel like you might like that. And I say it because I'm comfortable right now. I'm totally relaxed. But if somebody was like yelling at me and I couldn't like get out of the situation, I was in, a confined space like a car, and I couldn't get away from them and I couldn't get the music to go. I want to believe I would stop the car, and I want to believe I would go take a breather and go on a walk. But I don't know. My amygdala would be hijacked, right? And that lizard brain would probably be activated. And that's why I say I want to believe I would do those things. But I have been in your situation before, where I have been in a car with someone else, and the fighting was just gnarly. And it's like there's nowhere to go. You're typically somebody's driving, and which is dangerous in itself, right? Because you should be relaxed and you should be focused and alert when you're driving. You shouldn't be emotionally like in a rage. And I remember those are some of the worst fights because you're forced to stay with the person. But I have had moments where I literally essentially ejected myself from the car. I said, pull over. And then I got out and I walked my ass to wherever I was going just because I had had enough. And I knew if I had stayed in that car longer, things were going to get really, really scary.
Yeah, I think if I would have been the passenger instead of the driver, I think I would have just opened the door and rolled out onto the moving street. I think I would have. Up to 35, 40 miles an hour anyway. After that, of course,
That's
maybe.
pretty fast.
That's pretty fast, but I probably would have done it. Anything, anything. Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And I think the reason why it was so triggering and so overwhelming is because I've been through it and I hated it. I hated it. My goal is I've had so many issues with anger. Anger was present in my life growing up from a very young age until I left my home. And it stayed with me because it's what I knew. And so when you talk about anger and yours becoming even more present, especially after the traumatic brain injuries and just going to red much quicker and using the word rage, I totally get it. I totally get it. With me, I've had to see a therapist who I've seen multiple therapists, but the therapist I have now, she's a godsend. She speaks my language. She's wonderful. And she helps me come up with strategies, tools that I can actually utilize. And like anything else, like working out at the gym, you have to go and you have to practice and you have to be consistent. And can you fall off sometimes? Sure. But you got to get back up and you got to go. I think that it's very possible that you could not get as angry, go to red as quickly, maybe adding some new tools to your tool belt. You know what's funny is my therapist specializes with TBIs, in particular athletes, and how that affects the brain and how that affects their emotions. That's my therapist's specialty.
You might have to put me in touch.
I
I'd
think
love
I
to get
will.
some, yeah.
And
I'd
I
like
know
to.
you're in where? Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
So she's very well connected. And even if she might know somebody on your side or maybe somebody that you can see virtually.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider it, Definitely. I work a lot on this myself with my meditations and my nutrition and my sunlight and exercise, but I know I'm just hardwired differently than I used to be. And it's not really noticeable until somebody's messing with me. It's only like, and I think it's not just the chemical thing. I think it's, growing up being bullied. I was always the new kid. We were in the service. I was the new kid. Every 2 years we moved, and I was small and dorky and awkward. And
I didn't know that you were bullied, and I didn't know that your parent was your dad in the service?
he's in the Coast Guard. Yeah.
He was in the Coast Guard and
Yeah.
so you were moving around a lot?
We moved around a lot. Yeah. And, just being the new kid, being awkward, whatever. Got bullied a bit, and even when we kind of settled somewhere for a while when I was about 10, I was still smaller for my age. I had a late growth spurt in life, thankfully. I had one at least. But yeah, I just don't like people messing with me. So it was kind of a lifetime of that. So, the times I find myself getting really angry is when someone is just messing with me, whether it be like in traffic or in the surf, or when somebody's initiating some type of a disrespect or a confrontation. Like, I can honestly say I can't remember ever initiating anything with anyone as far as aggression. Pretty chill, Like, somebody makes a mistake or does something stupid or, accidentally cuts me off in traffic or accidentally drops in on me in the surf. I don't even get mad. I might get frustrated. I say, hey, like, try to watch out, but it's when people are purposefully trying to be disrespectful or antagonize or whatever, to the red pretty quickly.
You don't want to put up with their shit.
No.
And you don't feel like you have to.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's from the brain injuries, or do you feel like you're at this point in this life where you're like, no, I don't have to deal with that?
I think it's very much both. I'm tired of people being mean. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I don't start things with people, so I don't expect anyone to mess with me. I tread lightly. But I do think it's the chemistry thing too, because it was never like that until after my last couple of head injuries. The level of that feeling is so high and so intense. It's nothing like I experienced in the past.
What happened specifically when you got injured?
Well, so there's two really bad head injuries that were the last ones. There was a bunch when I was in my teens, BMX accidents and, surfing and boxing and stuff. I got knocked out a few times. But the last two were pretty bad. When I was 40, I got knocked unconscious for 30 minutes in I don't know if you want to call it a bar fight or what, but I was attacked by four very large Polynesians. They were four very large Polynesian bouncers at a nightclub. And while I was talking to the wrong girl at the wrong time, it was a girl that I knew and liked, but she had been on a couple dates with one of the bouncers. Guy didn't like me talking to his chick, as they'll say in Hawaii. And the four of them rolled over. Guy sucker punched me, lined me up, sucker punched me again, and then the second one kind of woke me up, so I started punching back. I'm a pretty well-trained boxer, so from what I'm told, I hit the guy pretty good a couple times. The other bouncer punched me, I punched him, and within a few seconds, it was just, 4-on-1. I was punching, fighting for my life. Finally, got knocked on the ground. They were kicking me in the head, and then the one guy jumped on my chest and started grounding and pounding my face until they said I went limp. And even after I was unconscious, the guy hit me in the head and face, I guess, a few more times. Broke my eye socket, broke my nose in 3 places. I had a good laceration under my eye. And yeah, they said I was unconscious for about 30 minutes, and I couldn't even talk straight for a couple weeks. I couldn't even order, like, I used to get the same coffee order at Starbucks every day, a double espresso splash soy. I'd go into Starbucks and I'd say, can I get a double espresso? Like, I really had to think about it, just as an example of the challenges I was having cognitively after that. And over time, it got better. I don't know if I ever really fully got 100% better. And then, I don't know, 9 years later, I was back in Hawaii surfing at a pretty heavy spot on a big day, the shallow, heavy spot. And I got sucked over on a wave and got thrown onto the reef on my back and hit my head on the reef and got knocked unconscious. Actually, I broke my sacrum and then hit my head and got knocked unconscious, which that whole experience is a story unto itself. But I was underwater for a bit, kind of in a lucid dream. Thankfully, I was dreaming that I was underwater, so I didn't suck in any water and drown. But, I got let back up and was able to get back onto the beach. And, of course, I had to go to the ER and get staples in my head. But I think that one compounded with the one prior to it, because I had a really hard time coming back from that one. Like, my cognitive function was jacked. Like, people would ask me questions, I couldn't even sometimes bring up the answer. And I think it chemically affected me in the way of a heavier depression than what I was already in. It affected me in a way I will refer to as apathy. In a sense, for whatever reason, for quite a while after that, I just felt apathetic in regards to my own life, in the sense that nothing really mattered. It didn't matter if I went to the gym. It didn't matter if I went surfing. It didn't matter if I did my work. It just didn't really matter. And that is a dangerous place to be, because I was living in LA at the time, had gone back to Hawaii for a visit, and LA wasn't really my happy place, and I was already kind of fighting the demons out there. So after that head injury and feeling the apathy and not being able to get off the couch to go surfing or to go to the gym or the things, to go in the sun, the things that have always kept me pretty grounded. So then the hole got deeper and darker for several months, and it got to the point where I was ready to do something bad, to myself. Luckily, I have this great love for my father and our connection. And I just knew I had to kind of hold it together for his sake, in the sense, like, the tragedy when people self-destruct is not the person that leaves, but the people that are left behind, right? And I know I can't do that to him. Couldn't do that to him. So I couldn't break out of that cycle of apathy and the bad habits that were a result, the lack of structure in my day, the lack of routine, the lack of activity. So it was then actually that I decided I needed to get away, and I went online. I was looking first at maybe going to like China and studying Kung Fu at the Shaolin Temple. Just to get away and to do something with structure. But instead of that, I opted for doing the 500-hour yoga and meditation teacher training in Nepal. And it wasn't necessarily to teach meditation. It was mostly to go somewhere where I was forced to practice structure and discipline on a daily basis to rebuild some new habits and hopefully rewire my brain a bit. and to get a good education and to deepen my own personal practice. And yeah, I went online and, I found the most amount of hours I could get. I wanted to go somewhere like Nepal or where, and booked it right then. And instantly I felt like there was some hope after I booked that. I was like, wow, so I couldn't break out of it on my own. And no one could help me. Friends knew I was going through stuff. Oh, call me if you need, or, which you appreciate. But, depressed people don't call people. Depressed people don't answer the phone, and people say, oh, we'll do this and do that. I'm like, yeah, I know what to do. But sometimes when you're depressed and you're in that state of self-apathy, you just can't, but going to Nepal and being around people and the teachers I had there and the structure and all of that, it helped me, and of course, deepening my own practice with meditation. The yoga was cool. I love yoga, practice every day a little bit, but it was more the mental aspect of the yoga and the movement and the meditations. And again, rebuilding some habits. When I came back to the state, well, I did I think a month at the training center, and then I took a month and I kind of went up to the mountains and did some writing and reflection on everything I had experienced and learned, and just wanted to really come back with a better mindset, which I did. I mean, I still had my demons there waiting for me that I had to contend with.
Back in LA?
Back in LA.
What demons are you referring to?
Okay, so for me, demons, people use that term differently, but I might consider them the demons of self-sabotage, right? And self-sabotage could be in the form of vice, whether it be drinking or smoking too much weed or chasing women. Procrastination can be a vice, shopping, whatever vice or form of self-sabotage that keeps a person from doing their personal work. And personal work can be your wellness routine, and personal work can also be your work, your job, or personal work can be talking to your therapist. It could be writing. It could be just going and sitting in the sun without your phone, looking at a tree.
Yeah.
It's so anything that keeps us off the ascending path, the path up to your higher version of who you could be, because if you're not on the ascending path, chances are you're on the descending path down into the valley of darkness, as I call it. And there's those crossroads along the path, right? One goes up, one goes down. And at the head of every crossroad, there's like a sexy cocktail waitress. She's got a little tray, she's like the hostess. She's got cocktails on the tray. She's got sweets. She's got whatever you want. Come on down, It's like, join the dark side. We have cookies. It's whatever temptation to indulge in immediate gratification or even avoidance as immediate gratification, avoiding looking at yourself, avoiding doing your work because you're afraid you're not going to do a great job. You're not going to do it perfectly. Perfectionism can be a deadly curse. Yeah, the demons of self-sabotage, I think, are rooted in a person's fear of success and failure. I think they're rooted in a person's self-worth and their I was going to say self-esteem, but that's a word that used to confuse me. But I've learned what self-esteem is true self-love, like loving yourself in a way that you see yourself as worthy of happiness. You see yourself worthy of success. You see yourself worthy of a good life. And sometimes we have subconscious things that are rooted in our subconscious that might believe otherwise, that might believe we're either a shitty person, so therefore not worthy of the good things, or maybe a stupid, lazy, undisciplined person that's not capable of maintaining that high level of organization and action that takes us to where we really most want to be in life. So when a person has, say, low self-esteem, low self-love, or a low self-worth, they're not going to believe themselves worthy and capable, and therefore indulging in the distractions, indulging in the self-sabotage. And it's kind of like those demons, on the shoulder, that little devil saying, hey, I know you're supposed to work tonight, but that girl just texted you. She wants to go out for drinks. Let's go chase that down. Or, you should go to this casting today, but you're probably not going to get it anyway, and you have to fight traffic. Why don't you just lay on the couch and scroll on Instagram? Like, well, there's, such a range of ways people can kind of screw over their future self.
Yeah. Wow. This was after you completed the 500-hour course in Nepal, yoga teacher training?
Yoga meditation
training. And when you came back, you had to contend with these demons, the cocktail waitress with the alcohol and
tray of goodies,
all the things. So how did you end up contending with those demons?
Well, like I say, it was a lot worse for me before I went to Nepal, because I was in a bad routine from, the apathy and the depression and lack of discipline. I have to take responsibility for that too. If I'd have been more disciplined, I could have, the discipline is your sword. I call it like awareness, the awareness of your thoughts and awareness of the temptations as your shield, to protect yourself from the dark forces, and then discipline as the sword to cut your way through. So if you stay armed and you stay vigilant, with discipline, with awareness, you can push through the dark times. But if you're allowing yourself to be soft mentally, and you're not picking up your shield and you're not swinging your sword with discipline, you got no chance, especially when you're overwhelmed with apathy. But, I was always one to meditate, but after getting to spend that intensive time in Nepal, like, it really helped me to work on my meditation practice in my own way, my own style, learning there's an infinite amount of ways to meditate. I can't say I even practiced all of them as much as we did there, but I found what worked for me and kind of infused that with my earlier style of meditation. So when I came back, I did have some much better habit patterns, and I knew I really wanted to stay on the ascending path as best as possible. The way I would contend with those demons, is I picked up my sword and I picked up my shield and I started to push back, when I would feel overwhelmed or apathetic and see myself wanting to just lay on the couch or to get on the dating app, whatever form of distraction. I would say, okay, like, is that helping who I want to be? Well, like, let's go out in the sun and sit in the grass and meditate for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. If you can do 5, maybe you do 7, maybe you do 10, maybe you do 30. And just having the habit structure of meditating more again and getting out in the sun and getting in my car and going somewhere when I was feeling like that helped. And writing. So it wasn't always perfect when I came back, because there were still those old temptations and that old environment. But I did come back with some new tools and sharpened some old ones. And I can't say it was always perfect, because I still didn't really like being in LA. I was in the Valley, had been in Hawaii 25 years prior to moving to LA, and used to being around good surf, fresh air, friendly, down-to-earth people. And there was traffic in Hawaii, but it wasn't anything like LA. I felt like jumping on the freeways in LA. It's like, I just never wanted to go anywhere. But luckily, it was a year later, and I went to Costa Rica, and COVID happened. Canceled my flight back to LA, stayed in Costa Rica for lockdown, and had the epiphany that I never wanted to go back to LA, and got my butt out of there, and, spent the last 4 or 5 years between Costa Rica and then, of course, now here in Virginia looking after my dad. And I'm thankful, I was able to get out of LA when I did. I'd be curious, however, to go back now, maybe revisit some of the work I was doing in some of the places. I don't know if I would, but I've thought about it, because I feel like the last few years of my life has shaped my psyche in a way that is more evolved and is stronger than it was, a few years ago.
And you're 57 now?
56.
56?
Yeah, 56.
And so I'm wondering, was it LA, or did the demons follow you to Costa Rica? Did the demons follow you to Bali, and are the demons present in Virginia?
You can't see them right here? Or are they on this shoulder? I forget.
I don't know. You tell me.
I think the angels are on this shoulder, and the devils, they get in this ear. Yeah, no, they've always been there. I've always been kind of, a little reckless, a little self-destructive, always, since I was a kid, I think. But it's been better and worse at times. I think it was less noticeable living in Hawaii for all those years, those 25 years, because I wasn't really striving for any higher goals or higher ideals. I was very content in my life. I was bartending at night, would have beers after work with my friends, wake up the next day, a little late, go surfing, go back to work, have some beers, maybe chase some lady friends around town, do it all over again. It was the life, and it was good. It was a lot of fun. It was wild in some ways. And then, I had this chance to go to Los Angeles and do some different work, do some acting, and it seemed interesting. And I jumped right in. And I think it was then more that I noticed the different forms of self-sabotage, because I had to be more of a self-starter, right? Had to, be more organized with my time and efficient, with classes and trying to create films and trying to audition and learn and study. And I did pretty well at first, with the enthusiasm and the focus, but it started to fall off the more you start to get disenchanted by the whole place or the whole industry itself. I think I just started to notice them more because I was striving for higher goals, and I guess I would see myself knock myself down through things like procrastination, through indulging in other activities other than working on what I needed to work on. And then it would feed on itself because you go, oh, you were supposed to do that thing, but instead you went out and had a drink with that lady friend last night. And now you're behind, like you're weak, or you don't have the discipline, or worse, worse thoughts, I would say, in regards to myself, which further kind of anchors that negative self-belief, and therefore the demons get a little bit stronger. You tend to indulge in avoidance more, and then the negative self-talk gets more negative, and it's, you're sort of reprogramming your self-concept through negative thought. A person can get beat down by their own self-talk to where it's like that's who they become, that self-belief, that negative self-concept, and it feeds on itself. It's a dangerous cycle. And I think that never would have even experienced that had I not left the life I had in Hawaii. So I was very glad, actually, looking back, I was very glad that I went to LA and challenged myself in a different way and brought these demons out into the light. Because they had a good hold on me before. They were like, yeah, just, drink and surf and chase women and just live that for the whole, it's great. But I want more than that from my life. I want to explore the opportunities with my meditation work and helping people with that, and building a business and a livelihood around that, like something that's my own, something that's helpful to people, helpful to myself. And it's really hard because I've never done anything like work online before, and wow, it's so hard. But I have been learning with that, but it's tough because I'm not around people when I'm doing it. I isolate a lot, and the demons want to get on my shoulder and say, oh man, like it's too hard, you can't do it, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, like why don't you give up, or why don't you just go lay down and scroll on Instagram instead of doing your work. So it's it's a daily fight with that. And I took that some time off the last 6 months with helping my mom through her divorce, and my dad's needed just a little bit more attention and some other things. My health had an issue for a while. And now that I'm getting back on the horse, I realize how much I missed sitting down and doing focused work and working with clients. And also one thing I've learned through all this last few months especially is like, hey, I need to be making recorded guided meditations for myself and my personal things. Yeah.
I've been thinking as you've been sharing about these demons, because I'm visualizing what they look like. I think of the cartoon of the devil and the angel, but I imagine like maybe a few devils, and they're all dancing around and they're smoking pot, and they're muscular because you feed them.
Interesting.
And what I was thinking is the devils they're just thoughts. They're just
Right.
thoughts. And if you starve them, what happens when we starve somebody? They get more irate, they get louder, they become more desperate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't feed that demon, then they're going to make their presence known even more. And so I used to visit a Buddhist monastery in San Diego. I did it for 6 months, and it still holds a very dear place in my heart. It's actually called Deer Park Monastery. And Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese monk who suggested, like, you don't just push away anger, because a lot of times these things they're rooted in anger, which is rooted in fear. I was almost thinking about taking the devil off your shoulder, and this is something you would have to do, not me, but you. But let's say I take the demon off my shoulder and I say, "Hey, I see you. I see you, buddy. I know you're upset. I hear you. It's okay. I got you. Listen, we're gonna evolve together." But I imagine that's what Thich Nhat Hanh did, is he nurtured and he supported, and it was very like fatherly or motherly. It was like embracing that anger, and instead of pushing it away and making it feel bad for how it was feeling, it's like, I'm here for you. I acknowledge you. I see you, and I'm going to take care of you.
Love that.
Yeah. So
Love that.
I wonder if you might consider the next time your demons start dancing around and they want to party, and you're like, I'm in a different place. I've been doing a lot of work. I'm committed to myself. My self-love is growing quite a bit. And I hear you, and I know you've been along with me, and I appreciate you being along with me since the beginning of time. And also, I hear you, okay? It's all right. I got you. I'm taking you with me, but we're going to grow together.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah, I
have
like
to,
that.
you don't have to reprimand your anger. You don't have to reprimand the part of you that likes to distract yourself, because you're a human being. Every single person listening to this, including myself, we all go through a lot of the same struggles. We have a lot of the same temptations. And so I think it's just a matter of just accepting that we're human, inherently flawed, and being kinder to ourselves. We really need to put into practice being kinder to ourselves. And that just makes every aspect of ourselves, even the demons, the so-called demons, kinder. And they loosen their grip. When you're sweet to them and you acknowledge them, they loosen their grip.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's kind of like in hypnotherapy or psychotherapy, what was it cognitive restructuring and parts therapy and all that, and kind of talking those parts of your mind or your consciousness that you feel might be unruly or have a negative intention for you, and trying to understand from that part of your psyche, like what that intention is, and seeing if there's another way, like a lot of times it's to protect us, right? Self-sabotage is sometimes considered a form of like self-protection, protecting ourselves from the fall from a greater height, the fall from success. If a person thinks, okay, like maybe I can succeed at one level or the next level, but at a certain point, I'm going to do something, or even just the fear of change that comes with success, the new group of friends, the new responsibilities, the new identity is terrifying for people. It's a good way to understand that those intentions from the demons of self-sabotage aren't really bad. They're trying to protect you, but maybe trying to negotiate and say, hey, is there another way we can protect ourselves? A healthier, better way.
Yes, I love that.
It's just good practices, good. But I love the way that you create and paint that analogy. That's lovely. That's a good way to think of it.
Thank
like
you.
that.
That's Thich Nhat Hanh. He was very, very wise. I'm also thinking about, you said the word failure, and like sometimes people do fear success because typically success isn't just an upward trend. There are a lot of failures before the success and during the success, and people fear those failures, and so they never get started. They want to. The intention is there, but they're just so afraid of the failures that they never put their intentions into action. And I'm wondering if we can start to look at failures in a different way, if we can change our perspective, because I used to be very, very, very afraid of failing. And so I lived a very small life. I lived a very predictable life that did not challenge me. It did not force me to grow. It kept me small, so to speak. And so I hung out with people who were very similar. I attracted those people into my life. And it wasn't until I started hearing these people that I respect talk about failure. A simple example, Michael Jordan and making like free throw shots. You know, he doesn't get them 100% of the time. He has to fail like thousands and thousands and thousands of times in order to get better. The thing is, he keeps going. He doesn't give up. He just accepts that failure is part of that process. And the people who give up because of the failure, those are the failures.
Right.
Failure is inevitable. You will have failure because failure is learning. Failure is personal growth. How you decide to look at failure is on you. You can let it take over and be so strong, and you can think of it as a negative thing. But like when I'm coaching my little girls, because I coach these little girls in running and how to deal with bullies and how to be inclusive and all these things. But when they do a quote unquote fail, or they mess up, or they feel bad about themselves, I'm like, hey, no, look, you're one step closer to reaching your goal. And I get excited about when they fail, and they get excited. And they're learning at an early age, like, hey, failing is part of this. It's an opportunity to keep going.
Absolutely. Love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're bringing it out of me. Everything that you've been sharing, no, I haven't had your life. I haven't had your exact experiences, but a lot of the things that you've grappled with your entire life, bullying, check, moving around a lot because your parent was in the service and that's hard, making new friends, check, dealing with, I wouldn't ever label myself as being clinically depressed because I never went to the doctor for that. But I have had several years in my life where I was just down and apathetic and just had very, very little ambition. And check. And so, you know, and sometimes I think a lot of people can relate to wanting to distract themselves and not do the work. And it's also okay. I feel like when you do the work, that's when you're supposed to do the work. And maybe distracting yourself is part of it so that you understand and know that as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there are some dangers with that as far as allowing ourselves to distract ourselves. But for so long or so many times, it could either become habitual, or I think it can sometimes reshape our self-concept or our belief system. I was creating this self-image or this self-belief as someone who didn't follow through or didn't discipline themselves consistently enough to really achieve. And I feel like one of the superpowers a person should have if they really want to achieve their ultimate aim is an unshakable belief in their ability to achieve it. And I don't necessarily use the word ability in the way of a person's intelligence or education or looks or connections, more an unshakable belief in our ability to stay disciplined, to stay focused. If you have a belief in your ability to stay focused and disciplined and to persevere and to push forward no matter what, those would be the key components of a self-belief system that's going to help keep you going through the hard times. I think there was a while back where I felt like I had the intelligence and the training and even the connections to make what I was doing a great success, but I didn't believe at the time that I was disciplined and focused and perseverant enough to actually make it happen. And that's what I'm working on within some of my personal meditations at the moment, after taking the last 6 months off, taking care of all these recent challenges, just trying to do more work on my self-concept and reestablishing the belief that I do have the discipline and the grit and the perseverance. And, you know, talking about going down the descending path, I don't even party anymore. I don't drink at all. Never really done heavy drugs. You know, I've done quite a bit of mushrooms. I used to smoke a lot of weed. I indulge in that on the occasion. But for me, the partying can be just, I say, just laying on my bed, getting on Instagram. Or just, you know, it could be something so seemingly but harmless as that, but it's, you know, it's not harmless.
No, it's not.
No.
that can be an addiction in itself. That can be self-destructive. There's so many things that could go on there. You look for external validation,
Cat videos?
funny cat videos, like messing around with cucumbers and stuff. Are you happy now?
I don't really look for happiness anymore, to be honest. That's something I've kind of put out of my mind in the sense that I just want to be at peace with my daily actions, at peace with my thoughts, at peace with like trying to be a good person, just to feel good about myself, my actions, my thoughts, and let that be the path upwards to my ideal self, my ideal life, which would just be working consistently for myself in a way that helps others, creating value to life, accepting remuneration equal to that value that I contribute, and just being consistent with nurturing my future self, my relationships. And I think along that path, there's going to be definitely moments of happiness. I used to think, oh, I just want to be happy. But for me, there's no happy without the constructive action. Used to be I could just pour drinks at the bar all night and go surf in the morning and plop down in the sand without a towel, all wet, and lay in the sun, and just was like, hey, it was heavenly. And I think I was kind of happy, but I can't do that now. I mean, yeah, if I get a chance to go surf, I'm always going to jump at it. I don't have those opportunities as much right now living in Virginia, but being out there kind of does make me happy, but I can't live that life right now because I have goals, and they're not goals that detract from the present moment. I can still be very present in my life and work towards them, but I want more from myself, not necessarily from my life, but from myself. And if I can pull that out of myself in a cohesive manner where it translates into my work, contributing some value to mankind, humanity,
To be in service of others.
yeah, and it's to be in service of others, but not like the Mother Teresa. I'm not that selfless. I've always had a bad relationship with money. I was kind of like always like a hippie at heart. The best thing, the happiness is free, or the best things in life are free. But I'm like, no, like we need to make a living for ourselves. But I still had this bad relationship with money. The epiphany I had is that contributing great value. If I can create powerful meditation programs or some way that people can tap into their higher level of consciousness and benefit their lives, that's a great value. So if I can stay focused and fine tune my process and contribute value, and if I can contribute that value to a lot of people, I should be able to accept equal remuneration in regards to that value that I contribute.
Absolutely. I've also struggled with that as well. And I think that a huge part of it is not believing that you're worth it. And if you get to that point where you know your worth, then it starts to become more and more comfortable asking for what you feel you deserve based on your expertise, based on the energy given, based on the knowledge that you've obtained over the years, whether you went to, 500-hour yoga meditation training in Nepal or anything. All of that is worth something, and then you get to decide what that's worth. And as your self-worth increases, you start to become very, very comfortable and confident with asking for what you're worth. And then your relationship with money changes. And I'm speaking from personal experience. Mine has changed quite a bit in the past 5 years, going from definitely underestimating myself to feeling very confident in knowing my worth. And it's empowering. And I know, because we have so many similarities, I know that you will be able to do it. And because I know you're okay with being uncomfortable. At first, it's uncomfortable asking for what you're worth. But the more you do it, the better you get and the more comfortable it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been taking clients now as far as creating these meditation programs for about 5 years now. But there's friends out there that I know need the help. So I used to offer to create meditation programs for them, or at least one custom meditation that works in alignment with what it is they're trying to overcome or trying to achieve. But what I've noticed when I create these for my friends for free, they don't listen to them.
No, they don't, because
They
you
don't,
you gave
yeah,
it to them for free.
yeah.
I
They,
I I have friends ask me all the time, like, "Hey, I want to be a model. What do I need to do?" And it's like, well, This is kind of a long process, and so I'm going to kind of screen you and see if you're up for it. Also, you want personal training? Well, this is my livelihood, and friends want free photo shoots, and my job is to educate them and let them know, listen, I pay my own bills. I take care of me, and I know my worth, and I love you. And if you love me, there needs to be an exchange, an equal exchange of energy. And if I'm at a financial point where I don't need to accept money, but you can pay me in other ways, great. But a lot of my friends end up paying me because it just feels so good. Money is just an energy, and it's an exchange of that. And it's showing appreciation, it's showing respect. When you give something for free, a lot of times people don't value it as much. The more you increase that price, all of a sudden it becomes more valuable. I would highly recommend that you reconsider giving out your services for free. Find another way. If somebody can't afford it and they really want something that you have, whether it's a custom made guided meditation or personal training or something, like find another way for them to help you as well so that it feels like reciprocity. Because if it's one-sided, then you're going to have resentment towards that person, and that's not good.
Yeah, I've expected that with some of my friends I've tried to help in the past. And I didn't really feel slighted or anything. I didn't get mad because I knew they were already having a tough time before I decided to make the meditation for them. But yeah, I would probably still do it for certain people if they really needed help, because I feel like the right meditation with the right intention for the right person can make all the difference. But it's the
Absolutely.
person putting on the earphones and laying down and making the time to listen to it. And more than once. The ones that I make are with a specific intention, always. Whether it's to overcome fear of success or overcome low self-esteem or apathy. I think the potential for overcoming challenges in the subconscious is unlimited. But I believe a person will need to listen to that meditation much more than once if they want to bring about some lasting change. There's meditations I have made for myself that I will still listen to today, several years after making it. And I feel like every time I listen, it helps a little more. It brings the shift to where I want it to be, or maybe I was doing really well and then I stopped listening and then falling off a bit, and then I'll revisit it, and it kind of like a bit of a reboot.
I totally agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But the operative word here is if they listen to it.
Well, yeah.
Then more than just once. It's something that you need to get embedded in your mind. And when you're giving that gift for free, no exchange of money or anything, then I personally will help people with their health, with their nutrition, even if they don't pay me, if I know for sure they're going to use it. They
Right.
can't pay me, but there are so many other ways that people can help you. They can make you a meal. They can connect you with the right people. They could mow your lawn. What I'm saying is that there is always a way that people can do something in return. One of the beautiful things that I received when I was receiving therapy earlier on, when I wasn't making as much money, is I had a therapist offer a sliding scale. So she made it so that I could see her and receive high quality care, but she did it at a discount for me based on what my income was. And that really helped me tremendously. It made her feel really good too, because I was an amazing student. I listened and I did the work. But not everybody's like that. So I think it's just determining who is really going to value what you're giving to them.
Yeah, exactly.
David, you've shared so much today, and I appreciate all of it because you've reminded me so much of things that I've been working on. And I know that you're going to help a bunch of people who listen to this today, because a lot of people can relate. I know it. I certainly can. But I wondered if there was anything else that you wanted to share before we close this today.
Maybe just encourage people to work on their shield, to work on building that awareness of thought. Is a skill, I think, to be aware of when your thoughts aren't serving you, when they're negative or self-degrading, and take a step back and go, that's not really me. The real me is as Eckhart Tolle says, like the silent observer within your higher self, your consciousness. And I feel like the negative self-talk is generally some facet of the ego, whether it's negative self-programming or whatever intention it has, or maybe it's the demons. But just noticing when the self-talk is negative and just go, shh, stop, like it's okay, and just take a breath and say, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. I'm amazing. I'm brilliant. I'm a genius. Just to get those positive affirmations. Am I allowed to curse on your podcast?
Yes, and you already have.
Okay. Jeez. And when the negative self-talk tries to talk over you, over your affirmations, you tell, shut the fuck up. I'm fucking awesome. I'm a badass. I've been through a lot, but I'm still here and I'm just going to get better. I just got to focus on my breathing. Tell myself everything's going to be all right. I'm awesome. I'm going to do this. And anytime that self-chatter comes in, that's negative, say, hey, it's okay. It's all right. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love myself. I love you. It's going to be all right. Try to find a way to work with it. That awareness of the self-talk, and then go pick up your sword and start hacking through the bullshit and get to work, you know, whether it's your personal work, your work, you're going to the gym, you're going for a walk, unplugging from the phone, just fight back to the dark forces and hack away at the bullshit.
I love that. And get to work.
Get to work on something. Even if it's going to sleep, get to sleep, turn off the phone and get some rest.
Amen. And with that said, let's get to work.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do this.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Kat. It was nice to see you.
Likewise.